Welcome to another edition of Progress and Promise. Summer is nearly over, folks. You can tell because the school supplies are out and the kids are getting antsy. To help you get into the school spirit, we wanted to start the conversation about what success looks like in our schools. When this year's school grades were announced, there were signs of progress for several Escambia schools, especially Warrington Middle School, which brought its F grade from last year up to a D, thanks in large part to increases in writing, science, and math scores. Warrington is one of several schools that will have new leaders and principalships, and all of the area's principals will have to deal with an ever-rising bar for performance on state standardized tests. It is no secret that one of the most important ingredients for creating a good school is community involvement. Thanks to our executive producer, Quint Studer, we have access to some great experts in making positive change in education based right here in Pensacola. Quint, thank you once again for being with us. Can you please tell us some about how the Studer Group branched out into consulting with school systems to achieve the kind of meaningful, positive change that you've been able to see in the realm of healthcare?
Yeah, I'd love to. In fact, thank you. You know, I was a teacher myself.
That's right.
So I have a master's in education and a bachelor's in education from University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, and which was a big school for education. They produce a lot of the teachers in Wisconsin. And so I always were really caught in education. Even when I went into healthcare, I sort of morphed and worked with school districts that had students with drug and alcohol problems, and my first job was in a treatment center. So what happened, I've always been interested, and I always thought what we were doing in healthcare would work, but of course we were so busy in healthcare. And then about 6, 7 years ago, we'd have, let's say at hospital boards, I have community members. And it wasn't unusual for us to have a superintendent of school on one of the hospital boards. And they'd start seeing what we were doing, and they would go back to their school districts, like in Sarasota, which was one of the first, and they would start it, and they would all of a sudden see the results start getting better.
Great.
And then I was up in Wisconsin for a funeral of a friend of mine named Tom Murray, and I got there, and the night before they'd had a big meeting on evaluating the school superintendent, and it took like 7 or 8 hours, because I don't think they really had any good measurement. So it was almost subjective conversation with school board members, and there, of course, they have a selected superintendent, not an elected. So basically, the next day at the funeral, I saw the superintendent. We started talking, so we took a 3-year pilot and put our program into a school district up there, and it went from being near the bottom in performance near the top, and then all of a sudden we're in Jackson, Michigan, and then we're in we're up in Charleston, South Carolina. We end up in Texas. So we've had a lot of great success working with school districts. In fact, we're working with our first University of West Georgia, in fact, right now, too, because they're performance-based reimbursement. So we really think we have something here. The Carnegie Foundation this year, for the first time, I've really focused in now on public education. And they had their first national conference this year, and I was lucky enough to be one of the speakers. And then 2 of the school districts that we work with, out of the 14 or 15 school districts they talked about as bright spots in the United States, were schools that we work with. So that's sort of exciting.
That's wonderful.
And so with that, we started an education division. We hired Dr. Janet Pilcher, who was at University of West Florida, who had a doctorate degree in education and evaluation from Florida State. And it's growing really well. And of course, now we keep, not only do we help schools around the country, but we're actually creating jobs here in Pensacola for some of these educational experts.
That's wonderful. That's the best of both worlds. I think that kind of people sometimes who get involved in healthcare are people who are motivated by the need to help other people, and I think you see some of those common denominators in people who become teachers.
It's a calling. I was talking today to a gentleman whose daughter teaches the 4th grade, and it's got to be a calling. Almost any profession that we really do well at, no matter what it is, whether it's from brickwork to anything, is you have a calling. You want to make a difference. You know, in a brickwork, I bring that up because I think they make a great difference. It's an art. So most of our jobs really do have a meaning, but it seems like people that are attracted to these helping professions have a real deep calling to make a difference in human lives. And by making that calling, it's important because it's difficult. And I was talking to, again, this gentleman's daughter's a teacher, and she said, I think 10 of her students that started this, she didn't have at the beginning of the year, you know, rent is due, the family moves to another location, you get multiple schools, neither parent is at home. So it's not an easy task. So being a teacher, if you don't have that calling, you don't go through the tough times. So, you know, I'm a big advocate for our teachers, and not only here but everywhere.
Yeah, and you and Rishi, obviously, your support of the education community is very well known and appreciated
Well,
in the
thank you.
community. Well, we are so lucky to have one of these great minds from student
We are.
education with us. Melissa Matarazzo is joining us. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to our little corner of paradise.
Sure. Well, I had the great benefit of working with the student education team when I was an executive director in Charleston, South Carolina in the Charleston County School District. And I left that district to pursue completing my doctoral dissertation, and at the time was able to work with the student education team and study the experience of leaders in 3 of the districts that they work with. Throughout that process, I learned ever more about the implementation support and the coaching that student education offers, and so when they offered me a position full-time at my graduation, I was happy to take it.
And you are not just book smart, you were a teacher, a classroom teacher yourself.
Yeah, I started my career in New Hampshire. I was an 8th grade social studies teacher.
Oh, God bless the middle school teachers of the world.
Well, and I stuck around in middle school for a long time. I went to assistant principal and then the principal of a 1,500 student middle school in Massachusetts before my travels to Charleston, South Carolina, and working at the district level with a district of 45,000 students.
You know, that's interesting if I can bring that up, because sometimes we find, whether it be healthcare education, I call it terminal uniqueness. People come up with the reason why it won't work. They always have a reason. When I first came to Pensacola, we had a high employee turnover. They said it's a Navy town, people move in and out, yet we solved that issue. You talk about size. You know, people say, well, the district's too large, but that's one of the interesting things is Escambia County School District and Charleston are pretty much about the same size, I believe. And I know you studied different districts, and I think economically, how much there's some similarities there too, aren't there?
I think so. I think Escambia and Charleston both have a broad range of economics for different families in the community, similar in size, similar racial diversity, economic diversity. So I do think they have some similarities, and it is amazing, having worked in small districts to large districts, urban, rural, suburban, that in my experience there's more similar than there is different.
So what are, obviously you have classroom experience and then your training experience. What are some of the things that you took from the classroom that that are helping you in your endeavor now? Like, what lesson did you take? What lesson did you take from being in the classroom?
Well, I hope I took some. So one of the things I think about most powerfully is the bar you mentioned earlier is rising, and it's rising for all students, not just some students, but we expect and indeed kids deserve to achieve at the highest levels. And so from my time as a teacher, I remember how different every student was in my classroom. And so the key, I think, across our field is to get consistency around the individualization of education and the differentiation. So we have a bar, it's for everyone, and it should be ambitious, but we have to understand that every student and every school and every district may have some different means to get there. I think it's real important that we be looking at students as individuals and meeting them where they are.
We have, as I'm sure you're aware, we have a high school graduation rate that differs for our African American students than it is for our white students. The overall graduation rate in the county is 64%, but for white students it's 71%, and for black students it's about 51%. That disparity, if you look at the data, also that gap has pretty much existed in about the same height for several years. What kind of success did you all have in Charleston in trying to address some of those related issues?
I think, many districts across the country struggle with achievement gaps, whether they be racial or economic, but different groups of students achieving at different rates. And I think the key there is student engagement, that in many cases we've set up our schools to work really well for certain types of kids, and we haven't taken the time or the energy to make sure that what's going on in the classroom is relevant and meaningful to all of the students there. And it requires a lot of open awareness of how different the experiences our students are having than we did when we were in school, and saying what will have meaning for them that will keep them committed to this all the way through high school graduation. And I think where schools are showing that level of caring, and where leaders and teachers make sure that every student knows they belong and this is the place for them, then you tend to see more success.
Give us an example, because I mean, every teacher watching this show wants to engage students.
Sure.
Right.
I mean, in your travels across the country, your dissertation, tell
Yeah.
me specifically where you saw a technique or a school district where it worked.
So it makes me think of the school district of Menominee Falls, which is a place we work with in Wisconsin, not as large as Escambia or Charleston,
Right.
but the work they're doing could be replicated in any place. And in that district, every teacher is setting short cycle goals with their students based off what they need to know by the end of the year. They take that end of the year target and they break the year down. And every couple of weeks, those teachers and students, after studying, they assess the students' progress. They say who's met it, who hasn't, and then they have to get creative, because if you haven't met it in the traditional curriculum approach, it's really on the teacher and on the teacher's team to figure out what else will work. It's not a matter of working harder, because all of our teachers are working diligently, and they're some of the hardest working people I know. It's about using that data really carefully to try to pinpoint what a student needs for the next period of time, and they're doing a great job of it there.
And the flexibility to do it. You know, when I was a teacher, of course, I taught special needs students, but for example, if a student was really interested in cars, we would try to make his reading would be about cars, his math would be about cars. If somebody was interested in, clothing, then once again, our reading would be about clothing, our math would be about clothing. I always use the word, years ago, 1/3 of every man was a 42 regular. So if I was a tailor, somebody'd come in, I'd guess at 1 out of 3 are 42 regular, but our children don't fit like that. And I think it's the ability to use flexible methods, as you said, to get to where the child is, to sort of engage them with their passion.
You make me think of Burke High School, which is in Charleston, South Carolina, predominantly African-American students and many of very low-income backgrounds. They partnered with, if you aren't aware, Charleston, South Carolina has a great restaurant town. And so their culinary arts department was paired with one of the top chefs in that area, and they ended up making it pretty far in Michelle Obama's competition for a new recipe, a healthy recipe. And it galvanized a lot of the community around the soup that they were making. And there you had students engaged in something the town is well known for, but it really piqued their interest and was where they wanted to study.
And drawing on from that thread, I think that community involvement in some schools here is something that we have a struggle with, that we know how to reach a certain kind of parent, a certain group of parents, but it seems like it can be difficult to open the door for other people whose demands on their time are different. What are some strategies that you've seen that help deal with that?
That's a great question, and I think it is one every school district and lots of families are concerned about, making sure that relationship is strong. I think you got to flood the airwaves, the communication channels. You can't assume that a paper and a backpack makes it home. You got to use the internet. You got to be tweeting and Facebooking and messaging, text messaging. Our families communicate in so many different ways now. We have to be in every one of those channels. I think the other thing is you got to ask parents, what's going well here and what can we do better? And any moment that you have them, you've got to ask that question and then be willing to hear their response.
I think as we wrap up here, I think the other thing is to be willing to try different methods. For example, I was reading about in Oklahoma, they have where they actually believe, don't assume the parents or if the child's living with grandparents that they know what to do. They actually have volunteers that go into the home and they actually sit down with the parents or wherever that child is living and explain to them why that child needs to be read to, and they teach them and show them how to do it. So I think, again, no matter where a child lives, whether it's a foster home, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, or a parent, they want to do a good job, but sometimes you just don't know. So they actually go in and they teach the families, here's some things you can do at home that'll work with this child.
I think that's really important because, school certainly has changed a lot since we were all there. And, sometimes I'm confused. I am confused by homework that Common Core sends home for my rising third grader. I have access to certain tools and the wherewithal to find out the answer to that question, but some of those tools that I have are not available to other parents.
Right. Well, and as we wrap, we all talk about economic development, and with the Studer Institute, we've been studying wages and jobs and improving the quality of life. And even though it's a long-term strategy, it all comes down to education. It all comes down to improving the kids staying in school. But then importantly, if we've seen recently with the study by the Chamber and that, we have to get kids job ready. And when I've talked to places, whether you're an employer looking to hire or a new company coming in, you want that that student that is ready. And it doesn't always mean a college degree. It can be training in many of the trades. And I think the school districts really worked hard on a lot of their career academies too, which is, you know, certainly not lack of effort on our school district's part.
No, I think that's important to note. Melissa, thank you so much for being
Shannon.
with us.
Thank
Welcome to
Appreciate it.
Pensacola.
Yeah.
We're
Thanks
glad
very
you-
much. I'm
glad
very
you
happy
moved
to be
here.
here.
I heard someone tell you we show love with food around here, so don't be surprised.
I'm a little worried about that, but
Well, thank you so much. If you stick around, we'll be right back.
Our country needs your help. Many young people today feel as if they don't matter and that their future prospects are limited. As a nation, we need to invest in our young people, let them know that they are full of potential. Now let's help them succeed, and mentoring can do that. Mentors can help young people build confidence and give them hope for the future. So you can help your country by volunteering as a mentor to a young person in your community. And you'll be surprised how good it will make you feel. Mentoring works. Become a mentor.
Welcome back. One of the most important ways to pump life into a school is through its ties to the community. Debbie King is volunteer coordinator with the Escambia School District, and Sally Burgosh is coordinator of the Youth Motivator Project, a once-a-week mentoring program that helps pair students who need a little extra help with an adult who has an hour a week to help them. And they are both with us today. We are very fortunate to have you ladies. Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Shannon, for having us.
Now, Debbie, you are sort of the volunteer coordinator guru for the district. Is that your official title? Does it say guru on your desk?
I think it does. I think it does say
should.
guru.
And there you go to icon.
No,
That's
I'll
an
never be.
icon.
I'm never an icon.
Okay.
But we are really kind of the umbrella. The Community Involvement Office is
Right.
the volunteer services umbrella for the Escambia County School District.
And I think that, you know, people think of volunteering at school maybe in different ways, but you can kind of help take someone's desire to help and focus it in the way that the avenue that's best for them. So tell us a little bit about some of the different ways you can kind of help people.
Absolutely. I think a lot of the times we think about volunteers in schools, we think about 25 years ago, and it was mothers in schools.
Right.
And those days are over. Mothers are working, just like you and me. And they're still participating in schools, but they're not stay-at-home moms anymore. There are still some stay-at-home moms, of course, but they're not the majority of our volunteer base anymore. They are just a part of it. And so we do need to think about other ways that we can get people involved in schools that aren't home during the day, and there's all kinds of ways that we can do that.
I know that you and I have talked about your efforts in the past to help dads feel more drawn into the circle.
Absolutely. Fathers are critical. Men are critical to working with our students. And any way that we can get men to feel comfortable volunteering in schools, we want to do that. And one of the ways that we have found that they are comfortable is when other men ask them to get involved.
Ah, peer pressure?
Not just women.
Quinn, do
Not
men
ju-
respond to peer pressure?
Big time.
Not
I'm feeling
just
like I should run to a school right now while we're talking.
Yeah, and we have a place for you, I promise.
But I think employers can really promote
Oh,
this. I know, for
absolutely.
example, with Studer Group, we really promoted DD. We had, DD Comptons and that, lots of people. I went to a high school graduation this year because Mallory, my daughter, had been the peer mentor for over 4 years to the girl, and she graduated from high school, and neither parent spoke English. So that was fascinating. She was there. So I just think an employer, and I know there's employers who watch the show, and our people in the community and clubs can really push that. I know today at the Five Flags Rotary at lunchtime, one of the things they were sort of really recommending is, get involved in the schools, because, in education, we've talked about education, it's not just one thing. It's a whole entire community, like you talked about Charleston. It's a whole entire community owning the educational system, not just thinking it's you because you have a kid there or you because you went there and so on. So what's a motivator? Tell me about that, though. I'm interested. Tell me what your motivation
A youth
program.
motivator is it doesn't have to be somebody with a PhD. It's just somebody that has a big heart for kids. They help influence, motivate through education the students that are struggling, that need
So
maybe a
these
little
are adults.
intervention.
These are like volunteers.
They're volunteers that come into the school for 1 hour, 1 day a week,
Okay.
and sort of adopt a student for that school year. It is a 1-year commitment. We do ask that they come on time and they're at the school for 1 hour, 1 day a week. And boy, what a difference they're making.
What about training? You know, to me, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, well, can I sort of test drive this? I don't know if I could commit full time. I don't know if I'm going to like it. I don't know if I'm going to be good at it. I'm a little uncomfortable. What are some ways that I can learn more and to see if it's a good fit for me?
We
and so
do,
on?
it's a requirement that we make sure you come in and do a training
Okay.
to reference what you said about employers, and let's get them involved. Debbie and I have been the road show all summer, and we've gone to places like Penn Air and Navy Federal, and we're going to anybody that'll allow us to come and speak to them on behalf of the mentor program for Escambia County School District.
I have actually been a youth motivator mentor in the past. I haven't done it since I had my own kids, but it is a nice, at least my experience with it was a nice program, because if you aren't, like you said,
Right.
if you're not totally sure about it, you would get a folder and there would be something in there for you to do, and the teacher would leave you a note and say, these are, this is something that you want to do, we want to accomplish today. So it was easier than I thought it would be, because they give you a roadmap to follow.
Right.
And first of all, of course, mentoring, the academic portion, of course, is important, but just as important is the relationship that you're going to establish with that person. And it's just like anything else, Quentin, Shannon, that takes time.
Right, we're running out of time, so tell us a story, because I've heard some stories that just tear my heart out about how a mentor's made a difference in a child's life or an impact. Do you have a story to leave us with?
I have lots of them. In my training, I share all of these with you to kind of demonstrate what a difference you can make with just the right heart.
I'm going to share one of them.
But for example, my husband has mentored a student for about 4 years, and he just kind of every once in a while he would, look for, if he was making a difference. And he got a letter this year from his students saying, "I'm the first in my family to graduate. And Mr. Burgosh, it's because you told me I could." So a lot of times the mentors are just cheerleaders, giving them confidence and telling them that they really can make a difference and do it.
Well, that's wonderful. I know that sometimes it can be hard to know, like, if you're doing the right thing, if you're making the impact.
Well,
So that's
and
wonderful.
So I'm watching this show, and I'm very excited. I want to get involved. Who do I call? Where do I go?
You need to call the Community Involvement Office of the Escambia County School District.
Number?
And that phone number is 469-5676. And our wonderful secretary can route you any way you need to be routed to get.
I just pick up the phone. If nobody, I leave a
You
message.
can leave a message and we will track you down.
Track me down. Okay.
Give them the number again.
That's 469-5676.
All right. Well, thank you.
Perfect. Thank
Thanks
you.
for what you both do.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank
and
you.
Please thank your husband for his commitment to his student, and that's wonderful. Thank you, ladies, for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
You bet. And if you stick around, we will be right back in just a minute. Most people do resolutions in January. I think Pensacola should dare to be different. I think August is a great time for a resolution. A resolution to take the mantra of each one teach one seriously and to heart. The school year is about to begin. The sales tax holiday is over. The van has been crammed. The school clothes have been bought. Soon the buses will be on the road. This is the perfect time to ask yourself, what are you prepared to do? Teachers are the professionals. They have the training and the intellect to break down base 10 math theory and Common Core standards for expository writing into bits and pieces that children can digest. Principals are the tone setters. They are the leadership to make sure that resources are allocated to the students who are struggling and the staff who need help managing their classrooms. They create a culture that promotes accountability for everyone, from the lunch lady to the student of the month. Parents are the foundation. If a child in your life is in school, know his teacher's name. Ask your kid what she did in class today. Take the time to go over those reams of classwork sheets and homework assignments. If your child is under the age of 5, talk to them. Every day, talk to them. Narrate your day to talk about what you see as you drive down the street or what you pass in the grocery store. The more words those little ears hear, the better their chances are once they get into the classroom. Make sure that by the time they get to pre-K, they know more letters than the ones that appear on the Xbox controller. And if you aren't any of those things, you aren't off the hook either. In this community especially, we have the choice of how we want to pay the price. In a community where only half the Black kids who enter our high schools come out with a diploma, we can choose. In a community where 20 to 25% of our 5-year-olds are not ready for kindergarten, we can choose. In a community where low wages are tied to educational attainment levels, we absolutely have a choice. We can choose to spend an hour a day mentoring a kid, as Sally Burgosh's program offers us. We can choose to be a volunteer for eCare and help every child in Escambia County truly become a reader. We can choose to help Warrington Middle School have a band or a choral program because we value the spark that may nurture in kids who otherwise are totally ambivalent about school. Or we can pay for what happens when communities don't make choices that support a culture of learning at every age and station. We can pay with an economy that relies too heavily on service industry jobs that require few skills and pay low wages. We can pay by watching generational poverty spiral because that's what happens in those neighborhoods. We can pay with a crime rate that earns us a place on social media-fueled lists like the most violent small cities in America. Dr. Rick Harper says the greatest economic development investment that Pensacola can make is the investment in making sure we have literate, numerate 4-year-olds who show up to school eager and ready to learn. He's an economist. It's his job to follow the data where it leads. Who am I to argue with that? Thank you so much for being with us. Please follow us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Be sure to check out the website, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.